evening. Malacanang expresses grave concern over the presence of China's so-called monster ship off the coast of Zambales, adding that the Philippines is actively challenging its presence. In a press conference, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin says the palace views the presence of the monster ship with concern. He adds that the country has been challenging the presence of the Chinese ship. According to Bersamin, the Philippine Coast Guard has been very alert since the appearance of the ship.
Pasulpot-sulpot, and it is within our exclusive economic zone. So, tina-challenge yan. If you look at the YouTube channel, makikita ninyo where there were many occasions na tina-challenge ng ating mga Coast Guard vessels yung kanila. Meron ding counter-challenge yung Coast Guard ng China. But it all works well in the end kasi nothing confrontational happens.
Bersamin reiterates that the Philippine government consistently issues diplomatic protests against China for its aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. He also notes the existence of a permanent mechanism for discussions between Manila and Beijing, specifically the Vice Ministerial Level Conference aimed at the peaceful settlement of disputes in the West Philippine Sea. The so-called monster ship, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel 5901, was detected 100 kilometers from Capones Island using Canada's dark vessel detection system. The Philippine Coast Guard in response deployed its BRP Cabra to shadow the ship and assert the country's presence in the area. These developments occurred amid a long-time territorial dispute after China, through its so-called 10-dash line, claimed ownership of most of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, which is well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The palace says that implementing martial law is not on President Bongbong Marcos's mind following the reorganization of the National Security Council. In a press conference on Tuesday, January 7, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin responds to former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, who accused Marcos of following his father's footsteps in gearing for the return of martial law. According to Bersamin, martial law is not in the president's agenda. Instead, Bersamin says Marcos's priority is the economic prosperity of the country.
I don't think it is in the mind of the president right now. What he has in mind is the economic prosperity of the country, the health and welfare of the people, especially those of the lower classes, and the prioritization of his legacy projects. No? The president accepts that as the number one concern. It's not about martial law. It's not about extending himself in power. No.
Bersamin then calls Roque's insinuation that Marcos intends to impose martial law as malicious, adding that the Constitution is already very clear about when a president may declare martial law. All this developed after Marcos issued Executive Order 81, which reorganized the National Security Council and removed the vice president and past presidents from the council. This move irked several former officials, especially allies of former President Rodrigo Duterte and his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte. The chief of the Social Security system remains firm that the 1% contribution increase, which starts this January, can no longer be cancelled unless there are amendments in the law. In a palace briefing on Tuesday, January 7, SSS President and Chief Executive Officer Robert Joseph Declaro explains that the contribution hike is only in adherence to Republic Act No. 11199, or the act rationalizing and expanding the powers and duties of the Social Security Commission to ensure the long-term viability of the SSS. The law mandates a 1% increase in SSS contribution every 2 years, starting at 12% in 2019 and culminating at 15% in 2025. Despite calls to suspend the contribution increase this year, Declaro maintains that SSS is simply following the laws covering the Social Security system. He adds that if ever lawmakers decide to revisit the law for possible cancellation of the hike, the implemented 1% increase would still be enforced until it was finalized that the hike is no longer in effect. Declaro also says that instead of pushing for the cancellation of the premium hike, he urges lawmakers and private individuals to partner with the agency to help members who cannot afford to pay their contributions.
I take this opportunity sa ating mga mambabatas na gustong tumulong sa SSS. Kaysa ipasuspend natin itong increase na to, bakit hindi ho tayo umupo at pag-usapan kung paano nyo matutulungan ang ating manggagawa by entering into agreement with SSS on the contribution subsidy program, which is open to all. Private individuals, yung mga nakakaluwag ho sa buhay, we encourage you to also work with SSS.
Last January 3, veteran labor rights advocate Nery Colmenares urged the SSS to suspend the implementation of the hike, calling it absolutely unconscionable. Labor groups nagkaisa Labor Coalition, sentro ng mga nagkakaisa at progresibong manggagawa, and the Alliance of Concerned Teachers Private Schools also joined the mounting calls to suspend the increase. The SSS contribution rate increased to 15%, up from 14% in 2024. This move was projected to generate an additional 51.5 billion pesos in collections for 2025. Of this amount, 35% or 18.3 billion pesos will be allocated to the Mandatory Provident Fund, which serves as an additional savings account for private sector workers and other individual members. A bill seeking to grant ABS-CBN Corporation a franchise to operate has been filed in the House of Representatives. Albay's 2nd District Representative Joey Salceda files House Bill number 11252 on Tuesday, January 7. Citing House deliberations on the ABS-CBN franchise during the previous Congress, Salceda points out that the media giant did not violate ownership restrictions and did not have pending tax liabilities. Based on the bill, the lawmaker says the non-renewal of the ABS-CBN franchise cost some 11,000 direct jobs, and the information asymmetries that resulted from the loss of an information source cost thousands of new COVID-19 infections during the critical 2020 period. It also reads that prior to the rejection of the franchise renewal, some 36% of Filipinos derived their news and entertainment from the channel. It adds that ABS-CBN's extensive regional network reach was also the source for news and updates on impending disasters, making the channel crucial then to disaster risk reduction strategies at the local level. In a separate statement, Salceda says the free market of ideas requires competition, and a virtual monopoly will not do so as far as disseminating ideas and keeping the public informed is concerned. He echoes this in an ambush interview on the same day, saying he believes that granting franchise to the network was the right thing to do.
Kailangan ng kalaban ng GMA pagdating sa reporting on disasters. Kailangan natin yung free market of ideas and of course, reporting on events. Lalong-lalo na sa pananaw, patungkol sa kung ano ang nangyayari sa ating bayan. So, ako naniniwala na ang pagpapanumbalik ng isa sa mga sabi natin na magandang laban ng GMA at ng ABS ay nakakabuti sa bayan.
And these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.